Good morning, Morai, Vrabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we are on Daf Chet Amud Bet, 4 lines up from the beginning of the wide lines. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zechut Rufah Shelma for Daniel Moshe ben Farangis v'Avraham, Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid. Should have Rufah Shelma Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. The Amud also been dedicated Leilui Nishmat Betzalel ben Rafael ve'Esther. Leilui Nishmat Esther Bat Naftali Tzvi Alevi, and also Leilui Nishmat Yosef ben Meir, that they should all have an Aliyat Neshama. Amen. This month's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Shei family and Mahabubi families. Should be an ultimate zechut for all their mishpachot Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. So we're starting today yet another element that the Mishnah mentioned, that Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is not just what we call Rosh Hashanah, but it is Rosh Hashanah for a bunch of items. The Mishnah counts Rosh Hashanah Leshanim, Veleshemitin, Leyovelot, Leneti'ah, Ulirakot. So we have discussed already that Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah Leshanim and Shmitin, and today we're going to start the discussion about Yovel. Right, the 50th year, the Jubilee year, starts also from Echad Betishrei. So the Gemara asks the obvious question, because we know that the year of Yovel, the way we know it is with the blast of shofar that happens on the day of Yom Kippur. So we would all say, well, Yom Kippur is the start of the Yovel, because that's when the Avadim go home. Right, the Avadim are still in your home until the Yovel starts with the blast of shofar on Yom Kippur, and then you say bye to your servants, and also the fields, the sadot, go back to their original owners. So how is in the world that you have Echad B'Tishrei Rosh Hashanah leYovelot? That's the obvious question everyone should ask, and that's what the Gemara is going to ask. Says the Gemara, Yovelot bechad betishrei. Gemara says bechad betishrei. Since when it's echad betishrei? Yovelot beyud betishrei. It's in the 10th day of Tishrei on Yom Kippur. Dichtiv, as the pasuk says, beyom HaKippurim ta'aviru shofar bechol arsechem. The full pasuk reads, v'safarta lecha sheva shabetot shanim. When you count 7 Shabbatot Shanim, which means the Shabbat of the years, which means Shemitah, 7 of those Shemitah years, which gives you the 49th year. Sheva Pe'amim, Vehayu Lecha Yemei Sheva Shabbatot Hashanim Tesha V'Arba'im Shana. You have 49 years duration of Yovel to Yovel. Ve'ha'avarta shofar teruah b'chodesh hashvi b'asor lachodesh. You should have a shofar teruah be'asor lachodesh hashvi'i, in the 10th day of the 7th month, which is Yom Kippur. Beyom HaKippurim ta'aviru shofar b'chol arsechem. And then it says, this is all the onset of this pasuk that says v'kidashtem et shenat ha'chamishim shana. That's how you're going to be mekadesh the 50th year, the Jubilee year. Ukratem deror ba'ares, and you will call out for freedom in your land. Lechol yoshvea yoveli tiyeh lachem v'shavtem ish el achuzato. Every man is going to go back to his achuzah, to his inheritance. Ve'ish el mishpachtot hashuvu, and people who have been sold, also they're going to be going back to their families. So when you put these psukim together, what you will get is that Yovel starts from Yom Kippur of the 50th year. So how in the world are you telling me that Be'echad Betishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah 10 days before, is the beginning of the year for the Yovel years? So says the Gemara, that's not a problem. Hamani, who is the author of our Mishnah, Rabbi Yisraeli ben Oshen Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. We have had this before. Is Rabbi Yisraeli the son of Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka? The Tanya, the first wide line now, that we had in the Braita, v'kidashtem et shenat ha'chamishim shana. This pasuk that we just learned at the end, that you're going to be sanctifying the 50th year. Ma Talmud lomar. Why does he have to say? You already told me. Fishenemar because it says the pasuk biyom HaKippurim, Yachol lo tehe mitkadeshet ela miyom HaKippurim ve'elach. Can it possibly be that the year of Yovel, it's not going to be sanctified until Yom HaKippurim, but only from Yom Kippurim and on? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, no, you can't. You can't say that because it says, "V'kidashtem et shnat ha'chamishim." You have to sanctify the whole year of Chamishim. Melamed shemitkadeshet v'olechet. It teaches you, says Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli ben Beroka, this pasuk teaches you that's mitkadeshet v'olechet. It starts to be sanctified and it grows. In other words, it's not a one-stage sanctification. It's not that at one moment you blow shofar and chazak u'baruch. It's mitkadeshet ve'olechet. It is a process of v'kidashtem. It's a process of sanctification. How so? How do you have a process? You blow the shofar and they go out. What's the process? So it says Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, the way it works is mitchilata, and from the beginning of the year, it's mitkadeshet ve'olechet. From the beginning of the year, which means the Echad B'Tishrei, the day of Rosh Hashanah, starts being sanctified. And Mikan Amar Rabbi Yishmael Berosh Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, he explained that Mi Rosh Hashanah ad Yom Kippurim, from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur, lo hayu avadim niftarim lebatel. Avadim would not go home, they would not. But at the same time, velo mishtabedin, they would not work. They would be sitting there enjoying their Seudat Rosh Hashanah with your family, right? Wearing the Yoga Boss, the suit and the tie and a black tie event, sitting there. Now, all these years they worked. It must be a genius idea also, if you think about the psychology of this. You want to prep them for going out and being a Ben Chorin. The best way is that the people who were their masters, they are no longer their masters. You sit next to them, right? And you are not one of them. That's psychologically preps you. You don't have to necessarily go into that route of psychology over here, but it's a beautiful idea when you think about it. That for all these season of Yom Tov, of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippurim, they're there with you. They are dressed like a mensch. They're sitting by the table like a mensch. They're part of your family. They are no longer meshubadim. You cannot ask them, say, can you pick up the water and put it there, since you do it yourself, That's aside from the mitzvah of chesed, but he's not meshubat to you anymore. And he's there, not going home. He can't go home, but he can't ask him to do anything. Says Rabbi Shlomo Yisraeli Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, ולא משתעבדים לאדוניהם, אלא אוכלים ושותים, they're eating and drinking ושמחים, and they're happy, and to top it off, pun intended, ועטרותיהם בראשיהם, they have their crowns on their heads, so to speak, right? כיוון שהגיע יום הכיפורים, once the יום כיפור comes, תקעו בית דין בשופר, the בית דין blows the shofar, נפטרו עבדים לבתיהם, they now go home, וסתות חוזרות לבעליהן, and the fields go back to their original owners as well. So this is the shita of Rabbi Yishmael beno של Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka.
I'm sorry, the fields go back on Yom Kippur?
After Yom Kippur, yeah.
So this is kind of the way what happened with Mitzrayim, is Avadim, right? The last period, we no longer were...
Exactly. I mean, again, what I was saying is not just a cute thing. I really believe that, at least according to this shita, there is a genius of psychology that the only way that an enslaved mentality could go out of that is, when you see your adon and you're an equal with him, he's sitting there on his table, he cannot tell you a thing. You are now getting to have that feeling of self-worth, of the realization that I am now a free man. That's something to think about, something to talk about. So says the Gemara, V'Rabanan, Shanim ata mekadesh v'yata mekadesh chodashim. Now, how does Rabbanan, how Chachamim learn this, right? V'kidashtem et shenat ha-chamishim shana. What do you say? V'kidashtem et shenat ha-chamishim shana. So Rabbi, the shita that we just had right now, he learns that the kidashtem is mitkadeshet ve'olechet. Chachamim say, no, that's not the pshat. The pshat is that it's Kidashtem et Shenat HaChamishim Shana. You only are going to sanctify the year of Yovel, but you don't need to sanctify Chodashim. What is this? This is a sugya that's upcoming. We will have it. That whether or not when a Beit Din sees the Chodesh, you have to say Mekudash, Mekudash. When you are Mekadesh the Chodesh, right? The Kiddush HaChodesh, do you have to say actually Mekudash, Mekudash, or is it only something that is saved for Yovel, that the Beit Din, when the Shnat HaYovel comes in, you have to say actually Mekudash, that this year you have to sanctify it, actually verbalizing the Kedushat Hayom. So says the Gemara, Rabbanan Shani Ata Mekadesh V'Ata Mekadesh Chodashim. Tanya Idach, the other Braita says, Yovel Hi, when the Pasuk says Yovel Hi, it is Yovel. Why do you have to say Yovel Hi? Shnat HaChamishim Shana. Ma Talmud Lomar. Why do you have to specify Yovel Hi, which sounds like it's coming to say, it is Yovel, but nothing else is Yovel, right? What else would you think is Yovel that the Pasuk has to say, no, Yovel Hi, it is Yovel. Not so. What is that something else that you're coming to exclude that I would have thought it's going to be part of Yovel, and you're coming to tell me it's not part of Yovel? So says the Gemara, because the Pasuk says, V'kidashtem et Shnat HaChamishim, the Pasuk says you have to sanctify the 50th year. Yachol keshem shemitkadeshet veholechet mitchilata. Can I say that just like in the beginning, it's mitkadeshet ve'olechet. It's a process from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur that they start from Rosh Hashanah not working anymore, these slaves, and on Yom Kippur finally they go free. Can I also suggest that at the end of Shenat HaChamishim, at the end of the Jubilee year, also it's going to be a process between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Kach mitkadeshet ve'olechet besofa. At the end also it should be like that the Kedusha of the year should be extended until the next Yom Kippur. Right? Just like you have from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, here also you should have at the end from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. Right? This process also, you see maybe, just in a Ma'amar Muskar, parenthetically, in the Gemara Masechet Betzad Daf Tetzayin Amud Aleph, the first line, the Gemara there says, Kol mezonotav shel adam ketzuvot min Rosh Hashanah v'ad Yom HaKippurim. Right? Is that process, Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur, it's like a package that things happen between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Now, Rosh Hashanah nichtavim, right? Yom Kippurim nichtavim. We're going to have that also coming up in the Mishnah in Tetzayin and the Gemara Yud Zayin Yud Chet, upcoming in Masechet Rosh Hashanah. But be as it may, I may have thought that just like before, before the process of the shofar on Yom Kippur, you have Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur. Maybe in the Motza'eh Yovel, at the end of Shnat Yovel, also should be until the Yom Kippur of the next year. So the Gemara says, Ve'al titma, and do not be surprised. So how in the world are you extending Yovel after Yovel? Right? Don't be surprised, because the concept of whenever you have Shabbat, now Shabbat could be Shabbat of every week, could be Shabbat Shabbatonu Lachem of Yom HaKippurim, or could be the Shabbat of the years, which would be the year of Yovel, right? Any time that you have the concept of Shabbat, Sharem Mosifin Mechol ala Kodesh, we always add from Chol unto Kodesh. That's what we do. Whenever you have Kodesh and Chol, we add from the beginning and we add from the end. And that's a normalcy when it comes to dealing with the transitioning of Chol to Kodesh, Kodesh to Chol. We have it by Shabbat, we have it by Yom Kippur, we have it by Shnat HaShemitah or Yovel for that matter as well. So don't be surprised that I would extend the year of Yovel into the Yom Kippur 10 days after the Yovel is finished. So therefore, to Talmud Lomar, Yovel Hi. That's why you need the Pasuk to come and say, Yovel Hi, it is Yovel. Don't extend it to the Yom Kippur after Yovel. What it's teaching me is that you end Yovel by the night of Rosh Hashanah of the 51st year, and that is it. Don't extend it into the 51st year. That's why you need to say Yovel hi lachem. Fine. שנת ה-50 שלה. 50 אתה מקדש, ואי אתה מקדש 51. Right? You are mekadesh only the 50th year, but not the 51st year. V'Rabbanan, what do Rabbanan hold? Again, this is the Rabbi Yishmael ben Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka, the way he learned the pasuk. How do Rabbanan darshin that? Rabbanan who don't believe this drasha, they will tell you no. Yovel hi Kodesh Yelachem is coming to tell you, Shenat 50 ata moneh. Not Mekadesh, but moneh. You count the 50th year, Ve'i ata moneh Shenat 50 ve'achat. A comma in between 50 ve'achat. Tosafot even changes and takes the vav of ve'achat out, 50 achat. Right? So Rabbanan, that don't hold of the drasha that we just saw of being Mekadesh the 51st year, adding up to Yom Kippur, they have a different drasha. They hold, this is a machloket tanaim, we'll get to it. Rabbanan hold that you don't count the 50th year as the first year of the next cheshbon. And this becomes one of the big machlokets, one of the reasons that we don't know when Shnat HaYovel is because of this machloket. You know, we blow shofar every Yom Kippur, at the end of Yom Kippur, right? Why do we do it every year? There's no mitzvah to blow shofar on Yom Kippur every year. There isn't. The only mitzvah that there is to blow shofar on Yom Kippur is once in 50 years you do it on Yovel. The reason we do it every year is because we don't know which year is exactly Yovel. We don't have the hashbon which one is which. Why don't you know? Right, just to make that, we know if you go back in calendar and understand. So one of the massive reasons why it is because of this machloket, of how do you actually count. So I counted 49 years, right? The 49 years are a cycle, right? It's a cycle of 7. 7 times 7 is 49, and the 50th year is Yovel. Now you have 2 years back to back, which is Shemitah. Shemitah is Shemitah, and Yovel is also like a Shemitah year, right? Same laws. So what happens now with the next cycle? Do I get thrown off the count 1 year because the 50th year doesn't count for anything? It's just a year in the middle, and now I count a new cycle of 7 and then go on. So my whole count is now moved 1 year, right? Or do I say no? The 50th year is also the first year of the next cycle. It just happens to be a year of Shabbat, but doesn't mean that I'm not counting it as, we always count 7, right? 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, forever, right? That never gets off track. It is only that every 7th 7 is 49th, and the next one, which is the first year of the next 7, is going to also be the 50th year, which I'm going to be Shabbat. But it also is the first year of the next cycle, which means now instead of 7 years later having Shemitah, you'll have another Shemitah in 6 years. So you see now continue this. Every 100 years you are 2 years off, right? Every 1,000 years, now you are, right? So now you really don't know where you're holding. That's it. Well, one of the reasons how you cheshbon. Again, this is, I'm completely overly simplifying this, right? But that's just l'saber et ha'ozen, something to think about. So Rabbanan are coming to tell you, Yovel hi kodesh yelachem. It is kodesh that you count that for Yovel. It's Yovel hi. It's not the next cycle's first year. So that's the Gemara says, Shnat 50 ata moneh. You count it as the 50th year, but you do not count it as the first year of the next cycle. The next cycle starts for itself as the next year being the first year of the next cycle, not the second year. So says the Gemara, and this is la'afuke mid Rabbi Yehuda. This machloket tanaim that we mentioned, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that holds and surprisingly, we actually passing like Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Yehuda is the one that holds that no, you do count it. The 50th year is counted for both cycles. Is the last year of the previous cycle and the first year of the next cycle. That's the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. Kamash Malan Deno, Rabbanan hold that the pasuk that says Yovel He is coming to tell you Yovel He that you counted only as the 50th year and not as the first year of the next cycle. Amazing. Now this concept that we derech agav mentioned, right? We just threw in this concept of mosifin mechol ala kodesh, that you have to add from chol into kodesh. Why? Who says? Now, many times you're mosif mechol ala kodesh because it helps the OCD of a person. Like, the looking, say, Shabbat, especially before you had the atomic clocks, you don't know where it is. Chol chazak baruch. You do a few minutes early, you feel good, or a few hours early for those more sensitive, and you feel amazing, right? But is there a halachic thing? If I would know, imagine if I live by the coast and I see the sun going down. I know exactly when Shkia is. I know exactly when the nightfall is. In a world like that, do I really have to add? How do you know that you have to add from Cholan to Kodesh? It's bad enough, good enough. Right? It's good enough that you have 24 hours of Shabbat. Well, who says you have to have more? Right? So says the Gemara, how do we know it? The Tanya, the Braita says, Becharish ubekatzir tishbot. The pasuk speaking about Shabbat says, Sheshet yamim ta'avod, work 6 days. Ubayom hashvi'i tishbot, and the seventh day you should have Shabbat. Becharish ubekasir tishbot. He should have Shabbat from plowing and from harvesting. Now, the problem with that is that we have already psukim talking about the ban, the prohibition against plowing and harvesting on Shabbat. But we know it. You don't have to tell it to me. Aside from all the other things that we have to learn Melechet Avodah on Shabbat, we actually have it explicitly said that you cannot plow and you cannot harvest on Shabbat. So why are you telling it to me again? Why do you have to tell me Becharish ubekatzir tishbot? Right? Says the Gemara, it must be that the Charish v'Katzir that you're talking to me over here is not talking about Shabbat. Rabbi Akiva says, Eno tzarich lomar Charish v'Katzir shel Shvi'it. It doesn't have to tell you the Charish v'Katzir of Shvi'it. It doesn't even have to tell you not only Shabbat, but even Shvi'it. It doesn't have to tell you. Sha'arei kvar ne'emar, by Shvi'it, it says already, Sadcha lo tizra v'karmecha lo tizmor, that you can't plow, you can't plant, you can't, take off fruits. All those are banned. So, the pasuk is coming to tell you that you can't do charisha on erev shvi'it, even in the 6th year, before shvi'it starts. You cannot do a plow that would help. The purpose of it is to help the growth of the fruits and produce in Shnat HaShemitah. If you're trying to help the growth of the process of the planting and plowing is for the 7th year, you cannot do it. Even though that you're standing in the 6th year, still can't do it. So that's the extension of the 7th year that starts really early on in the 6th year already. The kasir shel shvi'it, and the katsir, the harvest, is shel shvi'it hayotze lemotzei shvi'it. Any fruit, imagine a fruit that already has had a third of its growth, right? That's the cutoff level. If it has had a third of its growth already, when the shvi'it finishes, right? You go into the Rosh Hashanah of the 8th year. Can I have that fruit? Right? 2/3 of it grew on the 8th year. Yes or no? You'd say, al pi rov, you should go mutar, right? No. If you already reached 1/3 of its growth in Shvi'it, this is fruits of Shvi'it. You have to deal with it with Kedushat Shvi'it. All the halachot of Shvi'it. But it's the Shminit. It's the extension of Shnat HaShemitah. Becharish ubakatzir tishpot is coming to tell you that not only Shnat, Rabbi Akiva says, I know the actual plow and the actual harvest of the year of Shvi'it itself is Asur, right? So why do you have to, because it says Becharish ubakatzir tishpot, right? So why do you have to say the Charish and Katzir extra on a regular Shabbat, weekday Shabbat, is coming to tell you that in Shnat HaShemitah, a different level of Shabbat, you can't do Charish and Katzir even before and after Shvi'it. From here, Rabbi Akiva learns that whenever you have Shabbat, you have to add from before, you have to add afterwards as well. Otherwise, I would say, well, you cut it with scissors from before Rosh Hashanah of the 7th and after Rosh Hashanah of the 8th. We're done. Anything you harvest afterwards should be mutar. Anything you plow beforehand should be mutar. But when you see that the Torah bans that which relates to Shnat HaShemitah, even if it started before or ended after, is coming to tell you that anything that is attached to it, we go extension from before and we go extension from after as well. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yisraeli Omer, this was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yisraeli Omer, ma charish reshut av kasir. So it's coming to teach you completely a different halacha. It's coming to teach you that only ktsira of non-mitzvah items is asur on Shvi'it. But if you find, or on Shabbat, sorry, it's not talking about Shvi'it, rather, it's talking about Shabbat. It's not the ktsira of mitzvah that's asur, it's only the ktsira of reshut. What's the afkamina? Afkamina is, what happens if Tetzayin of Nisan happens to fall on Shabbat, right? You have the mitzvah of K'tzirat HaOmer, right? You have to bring Korban Omer. But Shabbat, I can't harvest, right? But it's a mitzvah harvest, right? It's a mitzvah harvest. He says you have to do K'tzirat HaOmer. So can I do it on Shabbat? Can I not do it on Shabbat? Rabbi Shlomo says you can do it. How do I know? You need a makor for that. It's Shabbat. Says Rabbi Shlomo, you learn it from here. Because it says, Bekatzir, Becharish, Ubekatzir Tishbot. It compares the Shabbat of Ktsira and Charisha together, plowing and harvesting together. Now, do you ever have a plowing that's mitzvah? No, you never have it. You never find a plowing that's mitzvah. You could have a harvest that's mitzvah, that's Ktsirat HaOmer, it's a mitzvah. So says Rabbi Ishmael, the Pasuk is coming to compare the plowing and the harvesting, that just like on Shabbat, plowing is asur when it's plowing that's not shel mitzvah, the harvest also is only asur when it's the harvest that's not shel mitzvah. But if you find the harvest that's mitzvah, it's not restricted by Shabbat. You could even do that type of harvest on Shabbat. What is it? The harvest of Omer. Says Gemara, Yatsa Ketzir HaOmer excludes the harvest of Korban Omer, Shehu Mitzvah, because that is a direct mitzvah. So therefore, if Tetzayim Ben Nisan falls to be on Shabbat, you could actually harvest and bring Korban HaOmer. So Simar fine. So Rabbi Ishmael is telling you that this pasuk about Shabbat, which is extra, that tells you Ubayom HaShavi'it Tishbot Becharish Bakatzir Tishbot, is talking about Korban HaOmer business. So according to Rabbi Ishmael, how do you know Mosifin Mechol Ala Kodesh? How do you know that every time you have Shabbat, Shavi'it, Yovel, then you have to add Yom Kippur, then you have to add from Chol unto Kodesh? You go a little bit extra from the beginning, you go a little extra at the end of Shabbat, or Yom Kippur, or Shavi'it, or Yovel. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Ishmael Mosifin Mechol Ala Kodesh Menale. How does he know it? Nafkale midetanya. He learns it from a different Braita. The Braita says, Ve'initem et nafshotechem. This is talking about now Yom Kippur. Ve'initem et nafshotechem. You put yourself through suffering of fasting. Betish'ah. It says Betish'ah b'chodesh. Right? When you fast, ve'initem et nafshotechem betish'ah on the 9th day of Tishrei. Do we fast on 9th day of Tishrei or 10th day of Tishrei? Right, 10th day. So why does the pasuk say, "Ve'initem benafshotechem betish'ah"? Right? The full pasuk reads, "Shabbat Shabbaton hu lachem." Is Shabbat Shabbaton Yom Kippurim? So it has that element of Shabbat that therefore we could learn from Yom Kippur to Shabbat, right? Ve'initem benafshotechem. You fast betish'ah lachodesh on the 9th day of Chodesh ba'erev. At night. So the Gemara says, Yachol b'tish'ah. Can it be that the fast is on the 9th? No, Talmud lomar ba'erev. It's at night. So you start at night. Ba'erev yachol mi shetechshach. If it's at night, can it be starting only from nightfall and on? So then the Gemara says, well, that would be 10th. But the pasuk says 9th. Right? Talmud lomar ba'erev. It says the 9th. Why would you say 9th if it's 10th? So you're saying an impossible wording, says the Gemara. The pasuk is saying something that's impossible to read. It says, is it betish'ah b'chodesh or is it ba'erev? Because ba'erev is no longer betish'ah b'chodesh. Right? If you want to tell me, if this is a fancy way of saying, from the night of 10th, just say 10th. We know it starts from night before. Every day starts from night before. But you tell me that on the 15th day of Nisan is Pesach. Do I celebrate it from morning of 15th? No, of course. It was night before. You tell me Rosh Hashanah. Every day in Chumash is like that. So obviously you're not telling me the 10th. You're telling me the 9th. So why don't you tell me the 10th? Like a mensch, just say the 10th, and I know it's from night before. So it's not 10th, it's 9th. But it can't be 9th because it says ba'erev. So now we're really confused. The Gemara says, the pasuk is coming to tell you, haketzat, how does it work? Matchilu mit'anemi be'od yom. You have to, you must. Mideoraita. Right? Tosefet Yom Kippur is deoraita. Again, it's a debate. We're overly simplifying all of this. You started matchilu mit'anemi be'od yom. You are starting the fast from the day. Melamet shomosifin mechol ala kodesh. Says the Braita, you see from here that you add from chol to kodesh, from 9th, which is a yom chol, to kodesh, which is the 10th. This is only the beginning of Yom Kippur. How do I know that I have to add to Yom Kippur at the end of Yom Kippur as well? It says me'erev at erev. Just like the erev before is added, ad erev is ad ve'ad bichlal, right? It's coming to tell you until night. Why do you have to tell me until night? Obviously, if you tell me the 10th day you're fasting, I know it's until night. So it's coming to tell you ad erev ve'ad bichlal, that the ad itself is bichlal, the erev itself is bichlal. That means you're fasting a little bit into the night as well. Tosefet Yom Kippur from before, Tosefet Yom Kippur from after. So Ella, it says Gemara, Eni Ella Yom Kippur. So I only know Yom Kippur over here. Shabbatot minayin. How do I know a regular Shabbat that I have? Talmud Lomar, Tishbetu. It's extra word, Tishbetu. Really, Tishbetu Shabbatechem is extra. Right? You don't need to say Tishbetu Shabbatechem. So from the word Tishbetu, you see a Shabbat also is like Yom Kippur. Yamim Tovim minayin. How do I know why a regular Yom Tov also you have a mitzvah of Tosefet Yom Tov? Talmud Lomar Shabbatechem. Tishbetu Shabbatechem. Both words are extra. But Tishbetu is from Shabbat. Shabbatechem is all the other Yamim Tovim who are also called Shabbat. Haketzat, how does that work? Kol makom shesh bo shavut, any time that you have Shabbat, right? Shabbat, Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, all of that, mosifin bechol ala kodesh. The Braita says you're mosif from kodesh to chol, from beginning, from the end, and that is the learning of this Braita. That's the shita of Rabbi Yisraeli against Rabbi Akiva, right? So says the Gemara of Rabbi Akiva, if Rabbi Akiva does not darshin, he doesn't need Tosefet Yom Kippur from here, because he learned Tosefet Yom Kippur from a regular Shabbat, right? By Becharish u'Bakasir Tishbot. If he learned, so what does he do? Tishbetu Shabbatechem me'erev ad erev. This whole limud that we had, mi'ba'ele lichtetani chiyabar Rav midifti. He learns a different thing from it. Says the Gemara, the Tanich bar Rav midifti. He said, "Ve'initem et nafshotechem betish'ah." When it says you should fast on the 9th day of Tishrei, Erev Yom Kippur, you fast on 9th, you fast on 10th. It's coming to teach you, ever famous Gemara. Anyone that eats and drinks on the 9th day of Tishrei, on Erev Yom Kippur, Ma'aleh alav hakatuv, the pasuk, the Torah, extends, is machshiv this for him, counts it for him as if ke'ilu it'ana teshiv asiri. It's now considered for you as though you fasted the 9th day and the 10th day. This needs a lot of explanation of why would you have such a thing that it's as if you fasted 9th and 10th just because you are eating a lot. On the 9th day, we'll explain that fascinating discussion, Be'ezrat Hashem, in the next shiur.
Cutting